going to blame this on Biden.
Hi, everyone. It's Cindy Morris with Buzz Chats tonight, and we have just a little bit of technical difficulties. My very good friend, Marc Eliot, is with us via phone because we couldn't get him streamed in, but that's okay. You know, this 2020 has been a year of pivot, so we're going to pivot the show a little bit tonight, and we'll have Marc. I'll ask him some questions. I'm trying to see where the speaker is here. Marc, do you want to say hi? Marc, do you want to say hi?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I hope everyone else can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
sorry, can't help you with HomeKit here.
Okay, let me take that off. That we're trying to help me. Okay.
Okay.
Here we are.
Okay. Again, welcome to Buzz Chats tonight. And tonight we had some technical difficulties getting Marc on live stream here, and he's out in New York. So we do have him on phone. So I will start the show like we do all. And this show was started in the beginning of our pandemic as a way to connect people that are connected to the school district or community and just have positive conversations. And I'll start off by letting Marc introduce himself because he is a very good personal friend and one of the most interesting people I think I've ever met in my lifetime. So what I usually do, Marc, is I'll ask our guests to introduce themselves in a nutshell. So if you could do that.
Well, I'm a writer. That would be the first definition I would give myself. And a teacher, I guess you could say that, a speaker, and just somebody who wanders down a path of life and somehow always stays in the right lane. I guess that's what how I would describe myself. If that is sufficient, open for interpretation.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that the guests can hear what you said there. So we will kind of go right into some questions. The question is, what is your relationship with Peoria and then Peoria Public Schools? So that's going to give the personal connection.
Did you say my connection to Peoria? Is that what you said?
Yes, to Peoria, and then further that because this show is all about Peoria Public Schools, you know, where I work and our foundation, and you're familiar with that. But start with your relationship with Peoria, and then that'll probably explain how you're connected to the school district.
Well, several years ago, I wrote a book about Ronald Reagan, but it wasn't a political book. I try to stay away from writing about politics as much as possible, at least directly. And John Morris, who I think you know, John Morris was at the time running Eureka College, where Ronald Reagan had gone, and so he got in touch with me and asked me if I would come and speak at the college about Reagan, and that they would have a little gathering and a meet and greet. And I said, sure. I think I had driven through Peoria once, but had never been there. And that to me is always one of the most exciting things in my life personally, is going somewhere where I haven't been before. It's a great way, it's a great form of education. Anyway, I did it. I said that the storm of the century was coming. It was Hurricane Sandy. And I called John and I said, John, I think there's going to be a hurricane. Don't worry about that, he said. Stop watching CNN and don't worry, you'll be fine. So I hopped on a plane. I think it was a Sunday. My memory serves me correctly. The event was a Sunday evening or Monday evening. Anyway, as we all know, Hurricane Sandy turned into the hurricane of the century. And there I was in Peoria in a little hotel room, and I couldn't get out, I think, for 6 days. But what was strangely enough wonderful about that is that it gave me a chance to get to know people a little bit more than just the kind of a flyover. John Morris, who was and is a wonderful guy, but that week that I was there, he was just so interesting and enthusiastic and seemed to have a boundless amount of energy, and that spilled over to Dave Arnold, who I think was the president of the university or the college at that time, Eureka College, and Mike Murtaugh, all these wonderful people who have now become friends of mine, people whom I communicate with all the time, and whenever I come to Peoria, I try to either see them, or if they're in town, or they see me. And of course, you and the rest of the family all become people I know and care about. And it felt a little bit like finding a branch of your family that you didn't know existed, like you see on all those TV shows. 50 years later, these people reunite. It felt something like that all of the people there were people I felt I knew. And that led to, whenever John would come to New York City, where I am, we would have dinner and we would talk, and what was I writing about, and all of that. Then he invited me back to show a film. I think it was at the college, and I think it was a Preston Sturges film, Sullivan's Travels, which, even though it was a small audience, they were right there with it. And John always said, I wish there were a way to set up some kind of a program for films. Then, when he switched over to the museum, the Riverfront Museum, there was a way, there was a pathway to set up a program where film should be in a museum or in museums, because film is an art form, as far as I'm concerned. I've studied it my entire life. I did all my education. My graduate work was in film and in writing, and managed to study with some of the people I consider the best film scholars in the country, and some reaching beyond the country, international. And to me, film, when you see film, you're seeing art. And there is a structure to that art, just like there is a structure to, say, Van Gogh. If you see early Van Gogh and then you see later Van Gogh, you really can't, you can't switch them. You can't see Starry Night and think that was an early Van Gogh. That's the end of Van Gogh, really. That's the end where his personality has gone so far away from normalcy that it's all reflected in that painting. Well, film is the same way, and if you approach film in a structure that focuses, for my purposes, on directors, and you follow the line of their films, you could never mistake The Lady Vanishes, an early Hitchcock film, with, say, Vertigo. They're essentially the same film, the same artist, but developed to a level that shows you their personality and how it has developed. That's the structure of looking at film. Not so much for plot. There are only 6 or 7 plots known to art, to writing, to fiction, to nonfiction. There are only 6 or 7 of them, and they all fall under certain specific categories. Joseph Heller, I think it was Joseph. Now I'm not thinking of Joseph Heller, the hero of 1,000 Faces, the fellow who wrote that book. A philosopher, a wonderful book. PBS did a whole series about him. The premise of his book is that there are only a half a dozen plots, and it's not the story that makes art, it's the way you tell the story. And that is my approach to trying to connect film to people, to audiences, to those who come and see a film, to try to direct the attention away from the plot and toward the character and the characters, because as the Greeks said, Heraclitus said, character is fate. And that's really the key for me to what art is all about. F. Scott Fitzgerald said something similar. But plot doesn't drive character. Character drives plot. And once you understand that, and then you can link the personality of a director to the personality of his characters, then you're onto something. And then you can begin to understand what the art of film is. Now, let me just say quickly that all film is not art. Just like all those paintings you can buy in the motels over the weekend, $5 a painting, decorate your whole house. You've seen those commercials. That's not art. That's painting. That's salesmanship. That's not art. So we're talking about those films that rise to the level of art that should be seen in a museum.
Yeah.
I hope that kind of explains what I do.
And Ruth Bittner, who works at the museum and is also connected with the foundation as a board member, she said Joseph Campbell, the hero.
Right, that's right. Joseph Heller wrote Catch-22.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell was the and I thank you, Ruth. I appreciate that.
And
as my editor, I could use somebody.
Yeah. So your getting to Peoria was really through Eureka College and John. And then when we first met, I instantly knew. I was like, I'm all about Peoria Public Schools and our work and providing experiences and opportunities for our kids. So I was like, Marc, will you come and talk to our kids? And you said immediately yes. And it was such a great experience. We had you at Peoria High first, and you talked to a very full room of students that I think it was their English class or English literature or something like that. But you talked to the students who were very engaged. And I remember you sitting up on the stool and you had a lot of wonderful questions, but it's not just even been, you spoke at Peoria High with students, you spoke at Richwoods with students. And so thank you for that. I know that you enjoyed every single bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I should be saying thank you to you, because those experiences for me are so, first of all, they're so enjoyable.
Yeah.
I love to talk to young people.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they haven't been jaded by Wonder Woman and Superman and all that. They've been a little bit. That's part of their youth. But they have been narrowed to a place where they're not open to experiences. So talking to young people, to me, is very exciting because, it crosses that generational gap, I guess. And I learn as much from them as they learn from me.
Yeah.
And so it keeps me connected, and so I really appreciate it. It's one of the things I enjoy a lot when I come to Peoria.
You were a master. You were wonderful. We'll get you back. I don't think you've been to Manual, so we'll have you at Manual the next time you're physically in Peoria. But I know that before the pandemic hit, you were kind of in talks with the museum, doing something with the museum with film. Where is that at the current moment?
Well, we have created a society at the Riverfront Museum. We have kind of structured it as a film society, and while I'm not there physically these days, usually I come 3 or 4 times a year and run, I guess, a long weekend of films that are programmed to be connected to each other. I know last year we did Western films, and we did a series on Hitchcock, and the whole point is to show that these films are connected, that they are artistic achievements, and if you see them together, you begin to understand. Hey, I see what's going on here. I see that. So we have done that, and while the nuclear fallout is happening outside, I am doing a series of introductions to films that I'm programming that will run. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, if they're going to screen them or stream them. I'm not really sure, but they are the beginning of this society that we hope to develop into something that makes the Riverfront Museum a noted film museum, that along with everything else it does, that it's also a film place of quality. And that's what we're trying to do. And John is, he's my greatest promoter there. He's just wonderful. And Renee, who is kind of the connection between John and me, who runs the planetarium and also is the person that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. Everybody seems to be into this idea that film is art and belongs in a museum and should be available and focused. So that's what we're doing. Among the other things in my life going on, that's a good part of it.
Yeah. I remember it was Hitchcock, and I think that's when I brought the Dr. Karat, whom you met, our superintendent. Yes. I brought her to Psycho. Was that right?
Yes, I think Psycho was the last film of the series.
Yes. So that was I loved that, the Hitchcock. And I know this is going to be hard for you, but hopefully you've been thinking about it a little bit. You only get to pick one, but what is your favorite book and author?
That is difficult. But I mean, I have, there are 4 or 5 books that have really brought me to writing when I was a kid or a boy. When I read these books, I knew that's what I was going to do. I knew I would be a writer. Even though I had been an entertainer, a child actor, the action for me was in writing. I'll tell you what they were. They're not traditionally classic books, but one of them was a book called Boys and Girls Together by William Goldman, who remains one of my favorite writers. He passed away 2 years ago. People probably know him best as a screenwriter. He did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was one of his plays. But he was a novelist first.
Okay.
And Boys and Girls Together, especially for young people, that is a wonderful, wonderful, big, sprawling, exciting book. And what it is, I'll tell you very briefly. It's everybody's life Broadway production, all their backstories, and how they all come to be in this play.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit like what is the bridge at San Luis Rey? It's something like that where all the lives are examined in one event. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I also loved and still love Henry Miller. I think he is one of the 20th century's greatest writers.
Mm-hmm.
He just was so inspiring to me as a kid. Not for the usual stuff that people associate him with, but for his ability to capture a time and a place when he was self-exiled to Paris and wrote these amazing novels. So he's one. And then somebody that I'm sure nobody has ever heard of, Alfred Bester, who wrote probably not just the greatest science fiction novel, but one of the great novels of the 20th century. It's called The Demolished Man. And I don't even know how to describe it. In a world where the police can read everybody's mind, crime is impossible. And yet, somebody tries to pull off the perfect crime.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds, what is he talking about? But the way it is written, again, not the story, but the way the story is told is so beautiful that it can move me to tears when I read it. It's so powerful. And I guess those would be. I also love Lolita. Again, not for the reasons that people usually associate with it, but because this idea of Europe being seduced by America, which is a reversal of the Henry James thesis that America had been seduced by Europe. It's a wonderfully written book. It's powerful and written in the second language of Nabokov. He didn't speak English until he was 40 years old. He was Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And his ability with the English language is just so overwhelmingly beautiful. So those are the books that I was drawn to. And then, Dickens, which my grandfather was a big fan of. I read all of Dickens and all of Mark Twain when I was a boy because he had all these collections in his home. And I read them, and they just explained better than any teacher could what writing is, what you do as a writer. So those would be the ones that would be on the list. I'd have to really think about. It's like children. What's your favorite child? I mean, it's that kind of thing. So that's my family of books.
Okay.
And I still go back to them. I still reread them from time to time, partly for inspiration and partly to be reminded of the level that I want to achieve in my own work.
Okay. I was showing the audience your picture. So I was showing them your picture from my phone. But so if you saw that was Marc Eliot. Let's see, we're going to go to another question here. I know that you posted on social media recently your latest book, or is that out now? And maybe you could tell who your subject was and why you chose your latest book that you wrote.
The book, it's a biography of Merle Haggard. Now I think people in the Midwest know who he was. People in New York maybe not so much, but everywhere else in the country they know him. He was a country music singer, up there with Hank Williams and Jimmy Rogers and Lefty Frizzell. His life is so powerful. His father died at the age of 9, when he was 9, when Merle was 9. And that kind of sent him into a bad place, where at the age of 19, he wound up in San Quentin State Prison in California. And yet, from that, he was able to turn his life around to becoming the great songwriter and singer that he became. So it's the kind of story that if you make it up, it doesn't sound so great, but if you write it as it happened, it becomes an incredibly moving story. And I've been lucky to be able to connect to so many great people who work with him. Dwight Yoakam, Marty Stewart, to name some of the more popular people. And they've all been, when it comes to Merle, everybody bows and says, well, if it's Merle Haggard, then I've got to tell you this and I've got to tell you that. It'll be out next fall in 2021. But I'll be talking about it more on the internet as we get closer to pub date. I think, and I say this about every book I write, I think this is the best book I've written. But I say that about every book. So,
yeah.
But this one is an epic. This is massive and important. I put him, if Bob Dylan was the voice of his generation, which would be the college kids of the 60s, mm-hmm. I put Merle, as he's known as the poet of the common man, blue-collar Shakespeare, all those things that they said about him are actually true. He is the rural Bob Dylan, or Bob Dylan is the urban Merle Haggard. And throughout the book, their lives kind of intersect creatively. And sometimes I think people will say, well, why is Bob Dylan in this book? And then at the climax, Bob Dylan resurrects Merle's career. It's a phenomenal story. And I love writing it. It's a haul, as they say, but I love writing it, and I'm excited about it, and I can't wait till it comes out and people can read this book. So it's called The Hag because his nickname was The Hag. No one called him Merle who knew him. They called him Hag, and it's the life, times, and music of Merle Haggard. So it's a good one. And then I'm going to Guatemala. I'm leading, hopefully in April, to do a month-long seminar in their university. They have a film division. It's in the city of, it's Guatemala City. It's the University of Guatemala. And again, I did it last year because I had never been to Guatemala and wanted to see it. But I just fell in love with these students and this faculty and the administration. They were so eager to learn and to see something that they normally don't get to see. So that's become an annual thing for me now down there. So, my life, I think I'm the only person working in New York City because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it actually helps me because there's very few distractions. So I can write these marathon sessions that I love doing.
Yeah. This might be hard again, but maybe you've thought about it.
All right.
If you could only pick one actor, because you've met a lot of actors in your lifetime so far, but do you have a favorite movie actor or actress? I mean, your top, yeah.
Well, I love Marlon Brando, the young Marlon Brando, I guess, if I had to qualify that. But I love Brando, James Dean, and Montgomery Clift. They all came out of the Actors Studio. They all celebrated pain in an odd way in their performances, but they changed film. They lowered the age. They took film away from guys like Clark Gable and Cary Grant, people I love, by the way. But they made film relevant for a younger audience. And so I guess that grouping, and I would put Sean Connery high on my list of people who I thought were just great on film. Film, when you see somebody on film, like Clint Eastwood, for example, when you see Clint Eastwood on film, 50 feet high, you're seeing not Clint Eastwood, but an idealized version of Clint Eastwood.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say Marlon Brando, what I mean is Marlon Brando, the actor,
Right.
the version that you see on screen. Off screen, he was a little nutty, and I got to meet him once, and he's very pleasant. But you could tell that there was something there that you weren't seeing, and
Right.
that part of him is what made him such a great actor, because that emerged
Mm-hmm.
from within
Right.
him on
Mm-hmm.
screen.
Right.
So I guess On the Waterfront
Mm-hmm.
is in my top 5 greatest movies that I've ever seen because of what he's able to do
Mm-hmm.
in that film.
Do you have a favorite actress?
Well, I like Isabella Gianni, a French actress.
Yes.
I like Grace Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess there are so many, but I think Isabella Gianni, the French actress, who one of her films we're going to see in the Film Society this year.
Mm-hmm.
She brought an intelligence to movies
Mm-hmm.
that you don't often see. Women in film have always been in the service of men. That's something that has always bothered me about film, is that women are the ultimate foils, but ultimately the story is the man's story. Isabella Gianni was one of those actresses that was able to successfully turn film away from being dependent upon men for their performances, for their abilities as an actor, as an actress, and show that women could be independent on film, and you could still tell a great story that they could bring. So she's a very important person in the history of film, and I like her very much.
And thank goodness we've gotten away from that, because I mean, and I think about myself with that topic, and you met my father a couple times, I think. Yeah. But I'll never forget some movies he took me to over the years. And I think he's the reason I fell in love with movies. But Alien stands out as this memory of the Sigourney Weaver, her character in that Alien. At that time, I just remember being so inspired by her, how bad she was, how much of a BA she was at that time. And I think she changed film, and that was in the early 80s?
Yeah, I saw that. I went to an advanced screening of that film, and nobody knew. I was living in Hollywood, and we would go to these 2 or 3 times a week. The studios would invite you to an advanced screening, critics, friends, and that. And I knew nothing about the film. And I went with my friend Dennis, who is a very, very good friend of mine, lives in L.A. And it's one of the very few times in a movie where I had to leave the theater. I couldn't stand it. It was so terrifying to me.
It was a terrifying movie, but great.
She was wonderful. It's a Ridley Scott film, and it's based on Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. That's what the film. That's where the script comes from, and her performance is great. She did a lot of wonderful films, but in that one, when she's got to take on the creature, we will hardly see in the film. That's metaphorically what I'm talking about. It's a woman who uses her wits, her braveness, and her wits to overcome this all-powerful
alien creature. Yep.
And wins. Outwits the creature. So you could see that as a way of women taking a position and not having to depend upon somebody else for them to succeed. It was a very important film when it came out for that reason, I think.
Right.
And again, from my point of view, the story is not that important. It's the character. And you see in that's a great example of a film where a character drives the plot.
Right.
The plot doesn't drive the character. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about. And the director, Ridley Scott, is one of my favorite directors.
Yeah, he's
just
outstanding.
So good. So
he is
powerful.
good. He is good. He's powerful. Yeah. I have to ask you about your favorite baker / cookie maker.
Let me see. Yeah, that's a hard one. I would have to say the Cindy Morris Cookie Factory has to remain at the all-time top of that mountain. And that's a hard mountain to be at the top of. There are some wonderful bakers, particularly in Paris, that I like a lot. But I would have to say the Cindy Morris Foundation of Cookies is at the very top of that list.
Well, I love to bake, and I'm telling you, if you're a friend and I love you, then if I give you cookies, you know that you're loved. And I have lots of friends I love, but I'll never forget you coming. I think it was Halloween. How many years ago?
That was Hurricane Sandy.
Yes.
That was the first trip that I made to Peoria, and I was stuck there for a week because there were no flights in New York. And I came to your house, and I remember the knock on the door.
Yeah.
And I opened it. I think you or John said, "Could you get that opened?" And I said, "What are these kids doing out here?"
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was Halloween. I was out of time and out of place.
Yeah.
But it was your cookies that made me want to start this entire film program. Not for films. I don't really care about films. So I know that when I'm coming to Peoria, I'm going to be in cookie heaven.
Yeah. Well, I just remember that you had never experienced trick-or-treaters, and you know we're all about trick-or-treaters and Halloween here. But I'll never forget making those fresh chocolate chip cookies. And I think you said at the time you'd never had a fresh baked chocolate chip cookie, and I was just like blown away by that. But
that's true. That is very true.
Yeah. So I can't wait. I can't wait till you come to town and I can make you some more chocolate chip cookies.
Well, as I say, that's why I'm doing this thing at the museum. That's the only reason. But having never been married, and having, although I do have a house in the country, I spend 99% of my time in cities. And in New York City, if someone knocks at your door, they're taking their lives in their hands if you're not expecting them. So trick-or-treating is not something in Manhattan that goes on a lot unless you know everybody in the building or where you live. So I knew what it was, but I never experienced the joy of that, seeing these little elves, at the door and collecting candy and cookies and all that. It was just great.
I think that I would like you to come to Peoria. Hopefully things are much better, but I would really like you to come for this Halloween 2021 for sure.
That's something that I'm going to pencil in now. So I can, if at all possible, maybe I'm sure I'll be on a book tour in the fall.
Yeah.
Or maybe swing something to combine everything together. Cookies, films, Merle.
And hedgehogs. Because you
hedgehog.
Yeah, you met Oda a few times, yeah.
At the Jaws, what's that wind-up tour on that video? So that's that hedgehog. I said, and also a cat? They have a cat and a hedgehog?
Taylor has a cat, and the cat, Olivia and Oda are like best friends.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
So it's fun times here. Yeah. So
John said to me, I'm not really a cat person.
Yeah.
And I said, what does that mean?
Uh-oh, Ruth's on. Ruth would not like to hear that because Ruth has two kitties, and Yeah, cats are one. Yeah, they're one.
But John, he is, as you know, if you have a cat in the house, it's part of the family.
Exactly. Yeah. So, let's see. We only have a few minutes left here.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on your next subject or topic of a book? Or I know you just finished the Merle or Hag.
I'm finishing. It's not quite.
Oh, it's not quite. Okay.
Not quite.
Okay.
It should be finished before I go to Guatemala.
Okay.
But I've been. I think I'm going to write my memoirs, so I can tell all my stories at one time and get them all out. And I think my own life is at this stage something that people might find slightly entertaining or interesting. But somehow something always comes along. One of the books that I wrote, I can't tell you what it is right now, but has just been optioned for a movie and for movie adaptation.
Wow.
And I'm going to be involved with that. So, something always, it's like being on the yellow brick road, and Oz is my memoirs, but somehow something gets me off the road. Those daisies, whatever, the flower distractions. I never quite get to the end, but I will get there. Hopefully, if my health holds up and my books do well, the museum flourishes with this film thing, that I will then at that point feel that I can write that memoir. Are
you thinking about, do you have kind of a next trip, even with, that work planned? Do you have one in mind, like in the spring, or?
You mean for Peoria?
Yeah, coming to Peoria.
As soon as it's safe to come, I will be there.
Yeah.
We've had two trips planned that were both canceled because of the pandemic.
Right.
But hopefully I'll be able to get vaccinated relatively soon. Unfortunately, the planning of this has been so crazy. But once that happens, I think things will change. I know that down in Guatemala, they are taking extraordinary measures to have this program succeed. So it is possible.
Yeah.
But I hopefully I'll be there. I'd like to say optimistically this spring.
Yeah.
To introduce some films and try to get people to recalibrate how they see movies.
Yeah, that's exciting. Was it before or right around the pandemic? Weren't you going to do Stanley Kubrick, or was that one of the?
That was one of the we were going to do a weekend of Kubrick or five nights of Kubrick, which Kubrick is such an important filmmaker and such a great filmmaker. And one of the joys I get out of a program like this is to show you his development. Early Kubrick, middle Kubrick, late Kubrick. So people can begin to understand that these films, even though they're one science fiction, or one is an adaptation of a novel, one is an anti-war film, they're really, in the end, all about Kubrick, all about the personality of Kubrick put on screen.
Right.
I know he's one of those filmmakers who was able to do it, like Hitchcock, like Ford, like Chaplin. There's just a pantheon, and in my pantheon, I put Kubrick.
Yeah. Well, we need to wrap up shortly, but what I'd like to do, we'll get you back on our Buzz Chats, and we'll make sure there's no technical difficulties, because you are just a fascinating speaker. There's so many questions and things we could discuss even further. But I'm going to put you on the spot, but when you are back in Peoria, I hope that we can get you once again to come and talk to our students.
Definitely.
You do such a great job, and we love our students to hear from, your background of, acting and your books, and you're a film scholar, and you're just a very fascinating person. And it's good for our young students to hear about your life. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm going to have you stay on the phone here while I just say a few parting words. And okay. Would you like to say anything as kind of your goodbye on this show tonight?
In the words of the immortal Douglas MacArthur, I shall return.
I like that. But yeah, so hang on the phone, Mark. And I would just like to say that Mark is a great personal friend, and he's just really, he does and cares about our community, and it's just happened over the years. But we'll get him back. And I would like to say that I talked to the CEO of the museum, Mr. John Morris, and he is excited that the museum will reopen on March 6th. And they've done a wonderful job with passes for our Peoria Public School students. So I just wanted to put that out there because, with being locked down for almost a year, it'll be great for our families and students to take advantage of that. So they get, I think, three times to come in for free and do all sorts of great things. So
let me say this to you about museums.
Yeah.
Democracy is its most powerful when art is allowed to be seen by the public.
Right.
And we're very lucky in this country to have such a dedicated society to art.
Yeah.
We're very lucky that we can see it, and we don't have to see it underground or in an alleyway.
Yeah.
Museums are places for art and for audiences to see art. So that is something that other countries don't necessarily have or allow. I've been all over the world, as you know. I've been in countries where you go to their best museum and it's all politics, it's all political stuff, it's all propaganda, and we don't have that here. And that's a great thing about living in this country.
Yeah.
One of the great.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Mark, and thank you so much to all the listeners and viewers tonight. Our upcoming guest in the next month, we're very excited to have, speaking of arts, Nikki Romaine from Art Inc. will be one of our guests, and we're very excited about that, and Carolina Huser, who is on the board at Art Inc. And then I'm really excited that we're getting Dr. Marquita Davis with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She was our speaker at our last 365 breakfast, and she's going to be our guest and kind of follow up, and she's a proud Manual alum. But so thank you all. I hope you have a good evening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.